This video is an organizational video, something I have not done for a long time. Now, I started thinking about base camps and tunnels that would be employed by militia. A lot of these are probably going to be something where you're going to want it to last a while. You're not going to use it for a long period of time. You're going to use it for 30 days, maybe 60 days during winter. But you don't want to actually tear everything apart so that the next time you come back, you're spending weeks building it just to tear it down again. And I got to remember something that used to be, I don't know if it still is, used to be in the U.S. Army, known as a force provider company. Now, a force provider company, I did some checking on it. These actually became an organization or a new style of unit right after the first Gulf War. In the first Gulf War, the U.S. military came in, set up a bunch of camps in the desert in Saudi Arabia, did their operations. Well, after the war, the Army did a after-action review on that process. How well did it work out? And their conclusion was it didn't. A lot of the stuff that was brought in was old, it was damaged, it was not suited for the environment. The troops didn't know exactly what they were doing for setting up these camps. And the Army made the decision that they needed to create a quartermaster company that its sole purpose was to set up base camps. These companies did go into operation after 9/11, setting up camps in Afghanistan, later in Iraq. Now, according to the Army's organization, and I can't find a lot on this, each force provider company was supposed to have 6 platoons, total organization around 150 personnel. Now, the missions of the force provider company was to provide tents for up to 550 personnel, 80,000 gallons of water, 40,000 gallons of fuel, energy production continuous for up to 1.1 megawatts. It would have a field kitchen team to provide hot chow for whoever stayed at the base camp as they were running it. It would have laundry facilities, latrine facilities, shower facilities, and it would also have recreation facilities set up. Now, reportedly, after the end of the war in Iraq, it looks like these companies were modified from just setting up a set camp style for 550. They changed it to kind of a modular system where now it's each module provides the same type of resources for up to 150 personnel. So basically, it went from setting up a forward operating base to being able to set up multiple combat outposts. We used to laugh at these units when I was in. We used to refer to them as hand job companies because their sole purpose in life was to sit behind the lines, not do any combat duty, and just provide relaxation for the soldiers. There used to be a large percentage of females in these companies, hence the term we referred to them as hand job companies. Now, how could something like this work for a militia? Well, with us, I don't think we call them force provider companies. We call them militia base camp companies. So it's going to be a unit that their sole purpose is to maintain base camps and tunnel systems, which are used as base camps. Their job is just that location. General organization, you're going to have a headquarters platoon, and inside this headquarters platoon, you really should have your mess team assigned to there for providing large amounts of bulk food, hot food for whoever stays there. You're also going to have your typical headquarters elements, operations, training, intelligence, logistics for the unit, that type of thing. You also should have a couple training sections inside the headquarters platoon also, not just to train the people to be in that platoon, but to basically double as, say, a basic training for recruits for militia units that use this base camp. So you can bring in the recruits to the base camp, pass them off to the drill instructors, and they train them up at the base camp, and then turn them over to the militia unit the next time that they come through, when those recruits would be ready. And their basic mission would be just basic training, basic rifleman training, infantry training. Specialized stuff like engineers, heavy weapons and that stuff, that would still have to be conducted by the unit. You should probably have 1 to 2 logistics platoons. Now these logistics platoons, they're going to be the ones that are going to be responsible for doing laundry or having the area set up so that the militiamen can do their laundry, having the wash tubs set up, areas that they can dry out the clothes. They would also be the ones that would be responsible for repair of uniforms and equipment. Stuff gets damaged, stuff wears out. Take it to the logistics platoon. They have their people inside there that are responsible for doing repairs on uniforms, doing repairs on equipment. And if they can't repair it, hopefully they have enough replacement items on hand that's the same item or similar, and they can just swap it out. Then they'll take that heavily damaged item, either repair it and put it back in the system, or pull it apart and use the parts to repair other items. They also would be the ones that would maintain the supplies at the base. Now the security platoon, their operation is going to be security of the base camp and local patrols around it. They're not going out to do combat missions. They could participate in raids in the area once in a while alongside a militia unit that comes through. But their mission is security, protecting that base. And that security platoon should be a mix of riflemen and heavy weapons, because they're going to need air defense, which could be man-portable air defense systems, man-pads, things like Stingers, Red Eyes, SA-7s, SA-16s, or it could be heavy machine guns like 50 calibers, 12.7 millimeters, 14.5 millimeters, or 23 millimeter machine guns. They would also have heavy weapons for ground assaults on the base. So anti-tank weapons such as TOWs or Russian AT-13s or AT-5s, American Javelins, NLAWs. They would also have access to heavy machine guns such as M250 calibers, Mark 19 automatic grenade launchers, M240 or M60 machine guns or PKMs. And they would also have mortars, basically 60 millimeter up to 81, 82 millimeter in size for protection of that base. And then you'd have one engineer platoon. That engineer platoon's primary mission is the defense and improvement of the base. They're the ones that would be primarily responsible for digging tunnels with the help of elements from the security platoon and logistics platoons to give them assistance. You know, busy work for these guys to help them accomplish their mission. Digging those additional tunnels, digging trenches, building bunkers, building rifle pits, putting in fencing, walls, whatever's needed, protective minefields. That's the job of the engineer platoon. Now, the primary missions of the Militia Base Camp Company should be, first and foremost, maintaining the camp. They're building it, they're improving the camp. And they have to maintain what is being built. They have to maintain those tunnels. They have to maintain that camp. A bombardment happens, Airstrikes come through, damages part of it. They need to go through and fix it and do a better job at camouflaging it for next time. Maybe bumping up the defenses on the sleep shelters or sleep areas as needed. Another mission of this company will be, when a unit comes through, figure up to company size, mass feeding of large groups of up to probably around 100 people figure. So they're going to need not just the pots that you use to seal canners, the large canning pots. We're talking they need the stuff that's used for like Red Cross emergencies, those giant size pots. They need to have a couple sets of those so that they can quickly, on a moment's notice, switch over to feeding not just their company, but up to 100 additional people. The logistics platoon, their mission is going to be gather and store supplies. So they're going to be going out there, they're going to be getting a hold of the building materials needed by the engineers. They're going to be getting a hold of materials needed to repair equipment or build equipment. Say you have in your logistics platoon a communications squad that deals with repairing radios and stuff. Well, that logistics platoon has to get a hold of the wires, the capacitors, and all that stuff to do that so they can repair those radios. Get a hold of the circuit boards, whatever they can. And remember, don't steal from civilians. Stealing from collaborators, that's a different story. But don't steal from civilians, because you're just going to piss them off, and they're going to be more likely to report the location of the base camp to the enemy. So let's say the logistics platoon, with the help of the security platoon, is going to acquire some materials to improve some tunnels. The engineers need sheet metal. They need lumber. They need posts so that they can dig tunnels, put in the bracings for the roofs. Well, they identify a collaborator. This farmer is constantly turning in information to the enemy. We know that. We've confirmed that. So then maybe one night, a raid is conducted on that collaborator. He wakes up in the morning. He finds one of his machine sheds is gone. Metal is completely stripped. Maybe there's some steel that was left up, the skeleton for the building, or maybe some posts that they weren't able to cut down. But everything is essentially gone. The equipment that was inside the shed, for the most part, is still there. Any hand tools that were in there probably disappeared. Any emergency generators that were hidden in there may have disappeared. But that's done as a message to that collaborator that, hey, we were able to get in here. We were able to do this without you knowing it. Maybe you should think twice about reporting information to the enemy. So it might not hurt to have a note that you leave at the site of where that building used to be. Now, it could be also acquiring food from that farmer. You're not going to take everything. You don't want to take all the food where they are left starving. But let's say that farmer had, say, a dozen or 2 dozen chickens. Well, his machine shed is gone, his chicken coop is empty, and all the feed for those chickens is gone, along with all the eggs that were in each of the nesting spots for the hens. All part of that note stating what happened, with the warning of, you continue giving information to the enemy, something worse can happen. But for the most part, the logistics platoon should forage for the items, steal from the enemy, purchase items off of the black market. That's how they get a hold of supplies. Something I was thinking about with the logistics platoon, you could have in there, they would be responsible for, say, your guerrilla gardens that are hidden around the area and going out and harvesting tree nuts like walnuts, pecans, and that stuff. They're also to go out, harvest fruits and berries when those are in season, bring it back to the base camp, and then you have a squad that their job is processing. They go through, dry the stuff or can the stuff, whatever capabilities they have available to them. Maybe you have a section, a team that they go out and they catch fish, large amounts of fish. They bring it back, it gets dried or it gets salted. They go out, catch game, dry it, salt it. Maybe they do a deal with the farmer. The farmer hands over a cow to them. Now he might slaughter it himself, keep some of the meat for himself, and he'll dispose of the parts that can't be used. And then he reports it to the enemy that, hey, I had a cow that was stolen, I need compensation. The logistics platoon comes in, gets the meat, gets the hide, tans the hide for leather for use by their repair sections. The meat gets brought back, it gets dried, turned into jerky. And then all that stuff is packed for long-term storage, maintained by the logistics platoon. Figure each base camp ideally should be able to provide a complete resupply for 2 units. And they should have that on hand at all times. Enough food, enough ammunition, enough water, fuel, whatever's needed to supply 2 different units. That way, if they have one that comes in, gets supplies, they still have enough left on hand that they can do another unit quickly, if also while they're rebuilding that one batch that was picked up and issued out. Some of the items that I could see that this type of company would need: spare TA-50 to have on hand, especially blankets, sleeping bags, cold weather gear, wet weather gear, mess kits, utensils, cook sets for units. I could see them having on hand spare uniforms, spare boots, spare t-shirts, spare underwear, spare socks. At a minimum, I would say the spare t-shirts, underwear, and socks is something they definitely should have on hand in large quantities. They should also have bunks or cots to allow for that unit to sleep with when they show up. They need somewhere to rest. Well, have bunks already made inside the tunnels or cots that can be used inside the sleep shelters, whatever you have available. And then obviously blankets or sleeping bags that unit can use when they show up, hence why I mentioned those. I'd recommend getting a hold of the old style manual sewing machines, the ones that were used the late 1800s to early 1900s. That type of stuff has to still be out there. Get a hold of that stuff. Not just for repairing of uniforms, try to get a hold of the heavy duty stuff that can be used to repair canvas and gear also. And make sure you have the supplies for that. Plenty of threads, spare materials for patches, whatever you need. Hand tools, all types, from your basic woodworking up into electronics, basic mechanics sets for repairing vehicles, generators, motorcycles, snowmobiles, whatever, and also lots of hand tools for digging, shovels, picks, pry bars. You're going to want come-alongs, anything that you need for doing a hand construction of cabins and or digging tunnels. And another thing that a lot of people won't think of, wash tubs. Wash tubs and washboards. And then you're also going to have to make sure you have large amounts of powder soap. Not liquid detergents, powdered soap. Powdered soap doesn't have the IR brighteners that liquid detergents does. So that's something that definitely you should have on hand. It's also a hell of a lot easier to store long term. You could have large bags of that stuff vacuum sealed inside totes, hidden inside the supply bunkers that the laundry company pulls out whenever it's needed. And then obviously basic hygiene items for whenever people come in. So you're going to want spare toothbrushes. You're going to want soap dish containers that a person can carry a bar of soap with if they don't have one. Soap, towels, washcloths, whatever is needed. Razors, lots of shaving cream, soap, shampoo, toothpaste, basic supplies. I'm giving you some ideas here on the types of things that this type of company can do. Now, maybe you don't need a company. Maybe you only need a platoon. Well, pare it down then. Have a couple people that are responsible for repairing uniforms, a couple people responsible for repairing gear, a couple people that are responsible for repairing weapons, a couple people that have skills at small engine repair and larger engine repair. So they can repair dirt bikes, they can repair ATVs, they can repair snowmobiles, they can repair generators. And then, say a section, a squad of engineers, and then I'd say at least 2 squads whose job is security. And that's their primary job. And then you have your platoon headquarters that will maintain this base camp area. Now, any offensive actions by this type of operation, I would still think of it as being more security. So possibly some IEDs on a nearby roadway occasionally, not very often. And then sniper missions, maybe some mortar attacks if someone gets too close to the base camp. But they need to be defensive in nature so as not to draw attention to the area. Ideally, a militia base camp, an enemy force should be able to walk right through it or right over it, right past it, and not even know it's there because it is camouflaged that well with the terrain, they don't even notice. The defenders hold their fire and only engage if you can confirm the enemy is attacking, they do know you're there. That's the only time you guys open up to hit it. And as they learned in Vietnam, you don't shoot at every helicopter that goes by. You only shoot at the helicopters that you know have located you and firing at you. That way, you're not drawing attention to the location. Now, before someone says, well, who cares about helicopters? There's drones. Think of a way to deal with them also. Maybe a nice little dead space that goes for a large area around the base camp, not just the area itself, a large area. You got little jammers set up all over the place. A drone even approaches it and it can't advance any further for whatever unknown reason by the enemy. Now, for all my engineer brothers and the Patriot Militia movements, always remember, essayons